Hello, everybody. Good evening. How are you? My name is Samson Z, your host for today. And of course, welcome down to Kopi Talk with Bosses. And today we're so fortunate to have a very, very special speaker, ladies and gentlemen. Our guest speaker is P. Patman from KSCGP Juris LLP. Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm very well, Samson. Thank
And
you.
for those at home, you really have to watch this program because if you're a business owner, whether you're a sole proprietor or a private limited company or other forms of shareholding, you need to watch this program, everybody, because this is such an important program. Now, why? Because later on, we're going to select some few of you to join us for consulting together with the bosses at Atlas. Okay, so be sure to join us. And if you have any questions, please don't be shy to type it in, and we'll try our best to answer those questions. Okay, so let's dive down straight and speak to our guests. So once again, P. Patman, how are you? Can you tell us a bit more about your work and this company that you're with?
Thanks, Samson. My name is Padman. I've been a lawyer for 30 years this year. Um, my firm is KSCGP Juris. We do quite a lot of work, but I personally only do disputes work, which means I only go to court. And the kind of work that I do are mostly commercial disputes, um, quite a lot of shareholder disputes, which is why I'm interested in this particular topic. Property disputes, family disputes, things like that. Anything to do with disputes and going to court. In the civil side of things, that's what I do.
There you go. So anytime you see a person with a black jacket and a white shirt inside, you know these guys mean business. We talk about your business as well, okay? Your interests and of course your shareholders at stake as well, okay? So this show is brought to you by Rock On Consulting Private Limited and also Summit Planners as well. And we bring you all the great speakers here. In fact, these are business people and very, very important topics. So today, let's begin with our topic. We have two main topics, folks. First one is shareholder agreement, okay? So tell us a bit more about how does this help one and should they have one or should they not have one?
I think every business owner will understand what I'm going to say. When you set up a company, you think of having one director, five directors, whatever. How many shareholders, how much capital, how many shares. Those are usually what people think of, and then they set up a company. And then your service provider, often a secretarial firm or a audit firm, will give you a standard template constitution which you um, lodge with ACRA. Now, let me tell you, these constitutions are bare minimum. They assume two things. They assume that the company is run reasonably well, and they assume that everybody is in good terms with each other. When those two assumptions are not met, then you'll have trouble. And then when you look at the shareholders agreement, you will find that you cannot solve the troubles that you have. So shareholders agreements are very valuable because they create additional rights which parties can negotiate between themselves. And these rights are binding on all of the shareholders. So that's why shareholders agreements are very important. Some of the things that you want to put in a shareholders agreement, which you will not find in the constitution, will be things like a shareholder reserve. How many percentage of votes do you want before you can make major decisions? Um, Board reserves. What kind of decisions can you make with the board? Is it simple majority or is it not simple majority? Did you want to entrench the founder so that the founder can never be removed? Did you want to have an anti-dilution clause so that somebody cannot just bring in fresh capital and dilute you? Did you want to have, as a shareholder, access to the financial documents, which normally under the constitution you will not have this access? So there are so many types of things which a shareholders agreement can create for the benefit of all shareholders, which a bare constitution will not. So personally, if you ask me, I highly recommend a shareholders agreement.
So can you give us some examples of some of the cases that you've actually attended where very simple stuff that you forgot to apply or to seek into the shareholding agreement?
Okay, so let's say we don't have a shareholders agreement. A few examples. What happens is the founder brings in family members and gives them majority control of the board, and then they vote him out.
Oh dear. Well, I just read a message this morning about a friend who actually told me exactly what you mentioned. He was supposed to, be bought over, or I would call it buyout, right?
Yes.
And they want to sell him out and buy his shares. So it was just in-laws, and he was very uncomfortable.
Exactly. It
And
gets
relationship,
worse. It gets
yes.
worse when you have family involved. It
Oh
gets
dear.
a lot worse. So that's one example. Another example might be if you don't have the right to a board seat. For example, you three friends come together and set up a company, and you might think that everybody has a board seat. And under the regular constitution, there's no guarantee a director seat. Whereas a shareholders agreement can guarantee a director seat. A shareholders agreement can guarantee that every single shareholder, even a 1% shareholder, has access to financial statements. So these are some of the things that when you go to court, the court will say if you didn't have a shareholders agreement, you just have a constitution to rely on, then you can't complain. It's your fault, not our fault. So please look at having a shareholders agreement. It's very useful, and it reduces the scope for quite a lot of disputes later on. And more important, Samson, is this: even if parties want to exit the company because you have your view, I have my view, my needs have changed, your needs have changed, the company has changed, everything has changed. I want to exit or you want to exit. The shareholders agreement will have an exit mechanism. Your normal constitution will not have an exit mechanism. So when you have the normal constitution, the problem is if we fight, there's only two solutions. Either we shake hands and settle, or we both go and fight in court.
Oh dear.
There is no middle ground where we can have a piece of paper that tells us, okay, why don't you put us a bid? Why don't you go and value the shares? Those mechanisms don't exist in a normal constitution. So I cannot emphasize enough how important a shareholders agreement is to every company.
Wow, that's how important it is, ladies and gentlemen. If you just joined us, a very good evening, everybody, and welcome down to Kopi or Talk with Bosses. And once again, today, our wonderful guest is P. Partman from KSCGP Juris LLP. We're going to insert the details for you to contact them. And of course, you need their services and all that. But I do recommend as well. We've come to this far, and you know how important the shareholders agreement are. Okay, for those of you who don't have yet or are in the process of having one. All right. So this shareholder agreement is for people who are still alive. You know, they're healthy and company's running pretty okay. What about those who are, who are not around? Something happens to the company. We call it the buy-sell agreement.
Yes. A buy-sell agreement, let me explain. That's a completely different type of agreement. That is not intended while the company is running, as you say, shareholders all healthy and happy and functional. So that's not the time. A buy and sell agreement is very important because when something happens to a shareholder, a few things can happen. He could pass away.
Okay.
Right? Illness, accident, whatever. He could have a disability, a stroke, a heart attack. He could have some sort of critical illness, a cancer. So that makes him unable to earn. So what happens to his share? What happens to his stake in the company? And also remember that his family are looking for some way to monetize his stake. As well as the company itself is asking themselves, how important is this guy? Can we support this guy? Can we buy him out? What's the future of the company? What happens if he's a key individual? So everybody is worried when something like that happens. So what a buy-sell agreement does, is very important to understand, is allows a funding mechanism to buy out the minority shareholder who is unwell. Not necessarily minority, any shareholder who is unwell, who is passed on, who is has a disability. So it is usually funded by insurance. Important to remember.
That's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah, it could be funded through cash, but very few companies keep aside this cash in retained earnings, right? So if you don't have retained earnings, the best way to do it is via insurance. I know Summit Planners does quite a lot of this sort of buy-sell agreements, but it's important to consider insurance as probably the best way to fund it. Because you pay very little and you get the protection, 1 million, 500,000, whatever. I mean, you normally get a life policy. So something happens to me, what I will do is I will resign, my shares get transferred to the company who can carry on running it, and my family will get the 1 million. It's a win-win situation for everybody.
Exactly.
So that's very, very important to have a buy-sell agreement.
There you go. So if you guys have any questions, please don't be shy, guys, to type it in, and we'll do our best to answer while we have P. Partman right here live with you guys. All right, at Kopi or Talk with Bosses. Okay. What other examples that you like to share?
I think
personally,
now that we're on the question of funding for these sorts of unfortunate events, I think bosses must also consider funding for other types of events. It could be by insurance, the common way. There are other ways, but insurance is the best way. One is liability insurance. I think every business owner who has taken a loan from a company would have been asked to give a personal guarantee.
Oh, yes.
Now, what happens when the company's business goes down? COVID, whatever reason, and then the bank has no sympathy for you, they call on the guarantee. It's $1 million guarantee. Where are you going to find the money? So, insurance is one solution for that sort of liability that is unexpected, that is unfortunate. Another type of insurance that is often important is what we call a D and O policy, directors and officers policy. Means that if you are acting as a company, as a director of a company, and you discharge your duties, subsequently something happens in the company, there's a mistake, there's a liability, there's a lawsuit, and they come looking after you as a director. And your job as a director, you're saying, I just only acted as a director, I didn't do anything else. The insurance will help protect your lawsuit and settle any damages that, unfortunately, if you have to pay, it'll come from the insurance. So some of these kinds of protections are necessary for companies. One thing I noticed, Samson, is that a lot of SMEs think that it'll always be nice and rosy for the rest of their lives. It's a good assumption to make, but unfortunately, I'm here to tell you that I specialize in family disputes and business disputes, and so many of these disputes would have had a better ending if they had these sorts of arrangements in hand.
Okay, you have to get this number, guys. This is very important. We're talking about not just the company, but also personal disputes as well, family dispute as well. Very, very important. Now, when you talk about asset management and all that, also if they're involved, that means anything can happen. I mean, they can come and get the house away from them. I mean, HDB flats are not
HDB flats
no,
are
they're not
immune from
right?
creditors, right? Except if you've taken a private mortgage, then
Condos
the
or whatever.
bank can come after you. But
Ah.
apart from that, HDB and CPF funds are immune from your creditors.
Mm.
But if you're living in a house, if you're living in any other kind of situation, you could have your assets seized, or B, worse, made bankrupt. And then bankruptcy brings with it problems like you can't travel without permission, you're disqualified from being a director. It's a bit embarrassing. But these are the risks when something goes wrong. So my own suggestion, of course, is that if you become a director of a company, then you are generally, not 100%, generally protected from the debts of the company. That's why you call a private limited. It's limited to the amount that you put in. You're not, as a director, having to take out money from your pocket to meet the creditors. So the private limited mechanism is a good mechanism, but it can be enhanced with some of these arrangements like shareholders agreement and buy-sell agreement, and some of these insurances that I'm talking about.
Wow. Definitely a lot of people will be calling us for this because I know a lot of people operating on a private sole proprietor, capacity. Most of them, even my companies are sole proprietor as well.
Okay,
So I've
then
been told.
you
I've been
might want to
told.
consider whether for your type of business and the risk that you manage, whether converting to a private limited might be a better solution in the long term.
Right. So a lot of you entrepreneurs want to be, you guys are always shifting from, one man show to a big company. Like my company is growing over the last 2 decades, in fact. So we need to be privatized and we need to seek a bigger group and shareholders and partners as well. So we're going to be calling you
you
soon.
you have to retain your founder's rights. You are the founder. You are the man behind the name. Retain yourself so that you can't be kicked out.
There you go. So much things that we all have to learn, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so well, that's all the time we have. So once again, joining us this evening is Department from KSCGP Juris LLP. We talked about shareholders agreement and also buy-sell agreement as well. So if you missed the whole chunk of this program, don't worry, folks. It's recorded, so you can always watch again. But most importantly is how to reach Department. Not to worry, we'll insert the link there and also the company contact as well, so you guys can get in touch with Department and get yourself, insured in one way or another, or protected in some way or another. Okay. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Samson Z. Before I go, some parting words to our business owners. What would you tell them?
I think in this situation, those who are watching, you'll realize that dangers and disasters can come across anytime. Look at what's happening now in the COVID situation. So many viable businesses. 1 year ago, a viable business is now no longer viable through no fault of anyone. So this is the kind of situation in which people must not only control costs but also manage their risks. So some of these things that we suggest, if you have to restart or if you have to reset your button, you want to consider these things because they do actually help you to manage your risk going forward.
Wow, amazing. Okay, so that's all we have, ladies and gentlemen, for the Kopi Talk with Bosses. Do join us again Thursdays, 8 p.m. And once again, this event is brought to you by Rock On Consulting Private Limited and also Summit Planners as well, bringing great speakers and, of course, great topics for you guys to tune in, okay? So, till we meet again, Thursdays, 8 p.m., ladies and gentlemen, my name is Samson Z, and together with P. Partman, saying good night, take care, and God bless you.